Let's hop back down to Capitol Hill, shall we? Because we have our chief congressional correspondent, Dana Bash, standing by, the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Bob Menendez. Dana, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Brooke. And Chairman Menendez, thank you very much for having us. In just about 20 minutes, you're going to be taking your chair over here. And the former chairman of this committee, now the Secretary of State, John Kerry, is going to be over here. We've seen this movie before, for better or worse, right? We're talking to him about Syria exactly a year ago, and now here we are. So my first question is, what do you want to hear from him? But more specifically, how concerned are you as a Democrat about the mixed messages coming from the White House on this strategy? Secretary Kerry told our Elise Labott that the U.S. isn't at war with ISIS, which the administration spent a few days backtracking from.
Well, Dan, I'm convinced that we are at war with ISIS, and we need to defeat ISIS before they create the operational capacity to have the ability to conduct a September 11th-like attack. That's critical. Now, what I'm looking forward from the hearing from the Secretary today is specifics. We have the broad outlines of what the president's strategy is to defeat ISIS. Well, I'd like to know what's the term of this engagement? What do we envision? What are the resources that have to come to bear? Our coalition partners, who's playing what senior roles? How much skin in the game do some of the most important senior partners, in my mind, that have to be, Sunni Muslim countries engaging in this fight? What's the political end state at the end of this this fight? And lastly, I am concerned about some of the comments the Secretary has made about Iran and our engagement with Iran in this process.
Well, I want to ask, I have some other questions about some of the mixed messages, but since you mentioned Iran, do you think that the U.S. is coordinating with Iran to fight ISIS? And if so, are you okay with that?
Well, look, I have a problem with engaging Iran in a direct way because Iran has different goals than we have. Iran creates sectarian division inside of Iraq, one of the challenges that the Iraqi nation has had. Iran is one of the patrons of Assad and has used their forces to help Assad be propped up. We have a different goal. We want an all-inclusive Iraq, including of Sunni, Shia, and Muslim. We want Saddam to leave. So I'm not, and we are obviously negotiating with them over their nuclear weapons program. So I don't get how we engage with Iran in this context, other than to realize that they're in the theater for their own interests.
Now, there was a big hearing yesterday in the Armed Services Committee. The Pentagon chiefs, at least General Dempsey, made clear that he believes that, from his perspective, U.S. boots on the ground should remain on the table. The president and the White House, it set off sort of a five-alarm political fire at the White House. The president again today said that is not his intention. Again, mixed messages?
Well, I listened to that hearing in the Armed Services Committee, and what I heard General Dempsey say, look, if I feel that there may be some advisor capacity, military advisor capacity that needs to be embedded at some point, I will recommend that to the president. This was not an expression of boots on the ground troops, rotational troops, battalions coming in of U.S. forces. This was more, as I gathered from his testimony, more the possibility of an advisor role.
But some of your colleagues think that that U.S. should keep the option of boots on the ground on the table, just as a strategy to put a little fear in ISIS.
Well, look, I'll say this. My goal, and I think the goal of the members of Congress, is the same goal as the administration. We must defeat ISIS. At the end of the day, we're going to have to listen. That's why today's hearing is so important, and others that will follow on that I intend to hold, both in intelligence briefings and whatnot, as to how do we achieve that. And you want to achieve that goal. Now, if you can achieve it simply by airstrikes and the use of other forces, Iraqi, Peshmerga, moderate vetted Syrian rebels, so be it. I'd rather see that. But we have to think about what is necessary to defeat ISIS.
In a couple of hours, the House is going to vote on a measure to authorize arming and training Syrian rebels. But that, assuming it passes, it will be folded into a bill to fund the government. What it means, in all practical purposes, is that you, as senators, aren't going to have a vote on that, a specific vote on that. I got to tell you, that looks a little cowardly. What do you think?
Well, first of all, a vote on the CR is going to be a vote to include. I mean, that's the major provision of the CR, other than to keep the government open, is going to be looked at as a vote in supporting. And many of my colleagues are thinking whether they'll cast a yay or nay vote based on the provision of funding the moderates.
But this is not.
Rebels.
But it is a major policy issue on a major problem that the president has laid out, but it'll be tucked into something that funds
I get
the
it,
government.
and I'm ready and willing to. I voted for a year ago in this very same committee to do exactly what we're doing, maybe for different purposes at the time, was to defeat Assad. I'm ready to cast that vote independently or as part of the CR myself. But this is why these hearings are going to be important, and why I believe at the end of the day, if we're going to have a prolonged engagement to defeat ISIL, then at the end of the day, we need an authorization for the use of military force, which comes before this committee.
And you are going to be working on that. You already are working on that, but you're not going to put it forward until after the election, correct?
Well, it has nothing to do with the election. This is all about getting it right, not getting it fast. I don't want to have another 2001 or 2003 authorization for the use of military force that has been used 13 years later in 4 different parts of the world. I don't want to give an open-ended blank check to this or any other president, and that's why getting the AUMF, the authorization for the use of force, right is more important than doing it fast.
But Congress is going to leave to go campaign. The Senate may be tomorrow, the House may be Friday. So why not stay here? I mean, if Congress is just leaving instead of staying and working on the kind of authorization you say is so necessary, it's just like, why not?
Well,
why are they going home to try to keep their jobs instead of staying here to do their jobs?
Well, I think we're going to use this period of time in October to go ahead and work with colleagues to find a strong bipartisan authorization for the use of military force, but also one that doesn't create an open-ended check for this presidency or any other president to send our sons and daughters into harm's way without the Congress's approval. And there will be a vote on this, and it will take place before the Congress, and I fully expect that we will have an AUMF first in the committee and then on the Senate floor and moving forward.
If I may, just one quick important policy question. John McCain, in the hearing at the Armed Services yesterday, was trying to get an answer on whether or not it should be the U.S. policy in this mission to go after Assad. If Assad targets successfully the Syrian Free Army that the U.S. is helping, should the U.S. then go after Assad? Do you think that should be part of the strategy and mission?
Well, what I heard General Dempsey, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, say is that if we do our training right, the moderate vetted Syrian rebels will be able to defend themselves against any attacks by Assad. But at the end of the day, from my perspective, I have always been an advocate, which is why I passed an AUMF for the use of military force when Assad was using chemical weapons with my colleagues here in the committee, why I also passed arming the vetted Syrian rebels a year ago. So I believe very much that Assad must go and that it is in the national interest of the United States to see that happen.
Chairman Menendez, thank you very much. We'll be watching the hearing starting in about 10 minutes. Thank you very much. And Brooke, back to you.
Chairman, thank you. Dana, thank you both very much. And just interesting, as Chairman Menendez is calling to hear specifics, we've heard the broad strategy from the president. You know, what will we hear from U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry as he testifies before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee? What will we hear as far as terms of engagement, coalition partners? What does the end of this look like? What is the role with Iran? We'll listen for all of that coming up live in a matter of minutes.